when we're talking about gender equality in the boardroom, I think businesses and organizations have, sort of been coaxed into trying to be more inclusive and things like that. But one thing we still remain very silent about is gender equality in the bedroom, right? Hi, I'm Leeza Mangaldas. I am a sex-positive content creator. I have a book out called The Sex Book, and I am so delighted to be here with HD Health Shots. So two things, actually, I would say, sort of drove the message home for me of how valuable it can be to receive sex education from a peer. I was an undergraduate at Columbia University. I was very lucky to get a scholarship there, and that's where I did my undergrad. And while there, I was an RA, a resident advisor. And one of the things that you receive as part of your training is that you're expected to conduct workshops with incoming freshmen around consent and contraception. And, as a freshman myself, I was on the receiving end of such workshops. And then from my second year onwards, I was a trainer. It really, early on in my time there, made me really appreciate like having these tools with which to navigate what was, even for me, many first experiences in this realm. The first time I visited a gynac, the first time I had a sexual experience, my first boyfriend, my first relationship, you're navigating your own relationships and sexual health. At least for me, college was the time of first experiences for me, and it was so wonderful to have this space where it felt like I could ask whatever questions I had. And then I ended up actually in my sort of academic areas of interest, I ended up focusing on gender and sexuality as the predominant themes in my work as well. And so, I started this YouTube channel when I came back to India, more like a passion project. I was working as a journalist. At that time, an internet career was not a viable, nobody thought being a voice on YouTube could be sufficiently sustainable to help you pay rent. You know what I mean? It was something you kind of did because you were interested in that topic and wanted to talk about it. And I didn't get to talk about the topics I was as interested in on TV or in my writing, often, an editorial board, and very many other people are deciding what you can write on when you're a junior journalist. So I was like, I care about sexual and reproductive health, and I'm going to just talk about it on my own because why not? It was more like, let's make it normal to talk about this stuff, and I never posited myself as an authority figure. It was much more like, I am going to do whatever I can to dismantle shame around this. I'm going to talk about sexuality in a judgment-free, scientifically accurate, shame-free way. It can be much harder to do this work if your own immediate environment is trying to stop you. So I'm very grateful that my parents have always been extremely supportive of my work, and growing up, that sexuality was not regarded as a topic that we can't talk about or that is shameful or bad, And studies actually indicate that young people who have access to a parent or teacher or caregiver who they can talk to honestly about sexuality and sexual health and turn to for scientifically accurate answers, judgment-free answers, they're more likely to delay having sex and less likely to take risks with their own or another person's health or safety. Knowledge is power. I think in school, there was the biology, the reproductive system chapter in bio class that was kind of rushed through. And even in that, you kind of see the male reproductive organs. And also, look, it's the reproductive system, right? Nobody's talking about sex for pleasure. So first of all, it's couched as this act in order to have babies. And secondly, you kind of learn about men's pleasure because ejaculation is a central part of reproduction, right? So you see the testes and the penis, and you learn about erection, penetration, ejaculation, but you only see the ovaries and the uterus. You never see a drawing of the vulva or with the clitoris labeled, right? Women's pleasure doesn't get a mention at all, and you don't even see the external genitalia. You literally only seeing the internal reproductive organs. So I think you tend to get the message, within those sort of educational contexts, that for women, sex is about having babies, not orgasms. And sometimes, schools will segregate children based on gender and talk only to the girls about menstruation and the menstrual cycle and things like that. I think really everybody should be learning about all bodies instead of segregating based on gender. I think people have been overwhelmingly supportive. And I think that, when you just look at the facts, when you look at a fact like that something like less than 5% of Indians use condoms, or the fact that marital rape is still legal, or the fact that homosexuality was decriminalized only in 2018, or you even look at the scope of something like the Me Too movement, I think in the last several years, young people are voicing their frustrations around a culture of shame and silence when it comes to sexuality. And so I think overwhelmingly people are very much on board with the idea that we deserve information around these topics, and that the work I do is valuable and important. I have received support. I have had less pushback than I thought I might. I think what's most heartening is to see many more people doing this. I feel like when I started this work, it felt a bit like I was this weird girl talking about sex, and there was so few others doing this in India. And I think over the years, there's a small but significant community, and many people write to me being like, I see you doing this, and it makes me think I can do this. It's okay to do this. You make it seem absolutely normal and comfortable and fun and respectable to talk about this stuff. And I never thought sex could be spoken of in that way. I would say the main sort of not so pleasant feedback that I have to deal with on a daily basis has to do more with slut shaming than with trying to sort of argue with what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It'll just be like, how can you talk about, women, good girls don't talk about sex. You must be such a slut. How much sex have you had? Which is silly, but it's going to take more than calling me a slut to make me shut up, right? And also I think people tend to sexualize somebody talking about sex, which is a bit exhausting, I guess, because sometimes you're missing the point. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with sexualizing oneself if that's what one wants to do, but sometimes you miss the point a little if that's not the intention of the creator and that is how you're receiving the content. In the last couple of decades, we're finally seeing sort of a more active interest in ensuring that there's more representation in leadership positions, or when we're talking about gender equality in the boardroom. I think businesses and organizations have, sort of been coaxed into trying to be more inclusive and things like that. But one thing we still remain very silent about is gender equality in the bedroom, right? And gender equality is not just this one thing, right? Just because we now have 2.5 more women leaders doesn't mean we've achieved gender equality. And it also doesn't function in silos, right? In a truly gender equal society, we would be experiencing equality in all aspects of life. And I really think one of the most telling fronts is the sexual dynamics. If we were living in a society where women were having equal orgasms, I would be happy to bet that would be a very gender equal society on all fronts, And so, when you look at the statistics, around orgasm equality, studies globally have shown that straight women are the least likely to be able to report frequently or always having an orgasm during sex. Straight women report having orgasms during sex less frequently than straight men, gay men, and lesbian women. And what does this reveal, right? What does this reveal? Not that women's bodies are inherently complicated, because then why would lesbians be having more frequent orgasms? It reveals that the script that we're fed around what heterosexual sex should look like is entirely focused on men's pleasure, right? It's erection, penetration, ejaculation. Sex ends when he comes. Women's orgasms are a sort of afterthought. By and large, even today, sex is sort of presented to women as this sort of duty that you just reluctantly perform for your husband, as opposed to something that you can like and direct and be actively involved in, right?